Today I've compiled a list of books that will in fact make you smarter, make you a better person, and is the first step on your road to preventing brain rot in your own literacy crisis. I'm sure by now in this year of 2026, we have all heard the
term literacy crisis.
And yes, we are in a literacy crisis.
Okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm.
What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure?
Stay calm. Wait.
But that's not as scary as it sounds. Well, it is. It is. But I feel like no one ever talks about what is the solution? What can we do to make it better? It's all we see on the internet is just shame. You don't
read, you can't read, you don't comprehend, you don't have a nuanced opinion.
There's never a let's hold each other's hand and walk through how we can solve this problem. The part of your brain that is used for reading is like a muscle. If you don't work it out, if you don't go to the gym, and by that I mean read literally anything, read deeply, read for understanding and not just for entertainment, then you're not stretching your brain muscle. And when that happens, it starts to atrophy and you start to not to be able to critically think in all aspects of your life. Unable to use that critical thinking muscle and see the nuance, see the perspective. It's just that we gotta do something. We gotta do something to get out of this spot that we're in. And this is the solution. Start With You by Mark Wolin. This book is about inherited trauma, literally how trauma can live and sit in your DNA. It is a very powerful read. It's a therapeutic book. There is a caveat. I wouldn't say if you're reading the book, I've seen people on Reddit talk about how this book like presents all the information as like a quick solution, and I do agree with that take. However, I don't think that it makes the book altogether just a throwaway because it's a starting point. Before I read this book, the idea of literal generational trauma is something that wasn't new to me when I picked up this book, but the way that this book explores like specific anecdotal cases on people who legitimately their cells that were inside of their grandmothers and their mothers and that are now living in them have been altered in some way because of whatever trauma. And it could be anything. It doesn't necessarily have to be on a grand scale. For example, there was this one case, I don't remember the specifics of it, but there was a woman who she had like this issue with being cold and it like triggering like a fight or flight sense in her, and come to find out she had an uncle who froze to death that she never knew about. And it's like multiple stories like that in this book. So I do feel like it does give you tools to start to explore that process and maybe start to like question things that you feel that you know are not your own. And I feel like that is the power that lies in this book. It made me more emotionally aware and emotionally intelligent for my own sense. Like if I'm feeling anxious and it's like literally not logical and I don't understand, I can have the tools and the questions to be like, okay, where is this emotion stemming from? What is this feeling coming from? Like, is it from me? Is it from something family emotional wise? It is a good starting point. Like I said, disclaimer, it is not a solution to all your problems, okay? Do not think you're gonna read this book and all of your emotional trauma is going to be solved. That's not true. That's not true. But it is a great starting point for emotional intelligence. Also, there's a lot of scientific data presented to you in this way, in a way that is digestible if you're not a big science person. I'm not a big science person, but it's a lot of psychology, it's genetics, epigenetics. So it's a great way to dip your toe in the pool of like scientific reading. And again, just because reading a book is hard, that's good. When you're living in the space of something is challenging, that means you're growing. If everything you're consuming is not a challenge for you, you're not really working at that muscle. It's like you're literally just lifting 2-pound weights. If you're just reading books that are just easily digested and they're not forcing you to like maybe spend some extra time on a page or a paragraph, your brain's not growing that way. The next book is another example of how uncomfortability is the key to growth. It is the 1619 Project, and I've talked about this book before. I've seen so many critiques of this book where people will say that the author, or it's multiple authors, it's multiple essays throughout the book, but people say the woman who put the book together, that she overstates the importance of slavery for American history. And I feel like that really cheapens it, and that shows like their misinterpretation and misunderstanding of the book, because one, the entire book is not only about slavery, it is about the consequences of it and how each of those consequences bleeds through the entirety of American history. It's such a complex read, and me personally, I legitimately have a degree in history, and there's in American history specifically, and there were so many things that I unlearned and had to unpack in how history is taught, how we ourselves teach history. It is so good. It's a great exercise in humility and being able to admit when you have thought the wrong thing. And that's where I think a lot of people's issue stems, because we know in 2026, in this era, you cannot tell somebody that they're wrong without them being like, feeling like it's a personal attack. And that is where the growth is. That is also the showing of an intelligent person, because if someone can correct you, or someone can say, hey, I don't disagree with that, and you literally don't start foaming at the mouth, that is a sign of maturity and intelligence, and everyone needs to work on that. The 33 Strategies of War by Robert Greene. Quick disclaimer before you click off the video, because I know how a lot of people feel about Robert Greene. Listen and feel what we want to wash over you, and relax. Robert Greene has been hijacked by these
super alpha bros,
whatever you want to call them, on the internet. Robert Greene, I feel like if you actually pay attention to his content, if you actually really read his books, he is studying human nature. And it's never about, like, you're not supposed to take all these things and be like, yeah, I'm gonna use this to manipulate and become a super, like, that's not at all what is the purpose of his books. In 33 Strategies of War specifically, I feel like that book, if you've ever been abused, victimized, harmed, that book is the essential toolkit in protecting yourself from narcissists and abusers and just toxic people in general. It's phenomenal. Like I'm not a very confrontational person. I can be slightly avoidant, and I can't tell you how many things in this book I use on a regular basis in order to literally assert myself in protection, right? Also, his books, he does research on legitimate people from history, and I feel like it's such a cool and interesting way, the way he breaks it down. Like, he gives you the anecdotal story of a person, like there's Josephine Baker and Cleopatra and Margaret Thatcher, and I mean literally people from all different walks of life, and he gives you their life story, maybe a specific part, and then he breaks down the psychology of it and how it connects to the book. And I don't understand the hate. I love Robert Greene. And Robert Greene's books are so challenging to read because it's like just so much information in each chapter, in each segment. Like, you really have to take your time and sit with the book. Like, the first Robert Greene book I read, it took me almost a year to read it, and I still feel like I could read it again and get something new out of it. So those Robert Greene's books are one of the so high on the list for books that will legitimately make you smarter and give you so many interesting conversation starters. Like the autobiography of Malcolm X. Malcolm X's biography is so full of stories and lessons that literally anyone from any walk of life can learn from. It genuinely made me smarter in the way you view other people. Specifically, how Malcolm X talks about his parents, and how he talks about his upbringing and how it wasn't the best, and like all of the things that his parents did wrong, but he doesn't necessarily say that like he's mad at them, or he's angry at them for some of the things, but he also comes to this understanding of like, my parents are people too. And I feel like that is such a true such a true rite of passage when you're growing up, when your prefrontal cortex is developing. you're like, wow, my parents are people. Like, you know, they literally were just learning. And that's not to excuse, like, obviously abusive parents or like toxic parents, but you know, at the end of the day, your parents were young once too. Your parents didn't know what they were doing. And I feel like that story, that lesson was very powerful. The other one is how he talks about how back in his time when he was like doing all these things to his hair and his the way he spoke and how he dressed, and how he had this like performance of being black for obviously other people, and how like that realization for him was so important, was a really good life lesson. And it was really interesting to see like how his fulfillment in himself completely did a 180 once he realized like the performance that he's putting on, and that it's not his own self-identity. And that's only two of the life lessons that I wanted to share, because I feel like all of the other things are so like legitimately personal and powerful that you have to read it on your own. So many things about feeling empathy, understanding, looking at other people's perspectives, standing on what you believe in, your moral code, even if it goes against the people that are closest to you. Like the list goes on and on and on and on. If you're gonna read any autobiography, it should be the autobiography of Malcolm X. The Women by Kristen Hanna. This book is so emotional, evocative. Like, I genuinely cannot speak more highly about this book. It moved me in such a visceral way. Like, it's about a woman. It's about multiple women, but it specifically centers on this one woman who decides to join the army during the Vietnam War. She wants to be a nurse in the army, and the journey that she goes on, and it's like in tandem with like all of the horrific things that she's going through is in tandem with like the Vietnam War, which, you know, is a piece of history that we can all kind of look back to and find different things to associate with. I cried multiple times reading this book. It just was so, oh my gosh, just breathtaking. Like, I have no words at how great it was. I also had no idea about, and I feel like most people are unaware of the experiences of women that were in the Vietnam War. So I just feel like this book is so important, and it just is not only in regards to like women in the military, but just like women and their experience in male-dominated industries in general, male-dominated fields. I mean, in the world, honestly. Like, wow. You know, why I say this book would make you smarter is because of the emotional awareness and heightened just empathy and care that you feel for other people's perspectives. Like, you genuinely, when people are going through hardships and like maybe they're not being like their best self, and like maybe they're hurting the people around them, you genuinely have to think about like what it is that they may be going through. Now,
obviously, there are people and humans on this planet that they're just bad people, and they're not really going through anything. They're just bad.
And I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about those people who are like unintentionally hurting themselves. No, they're intentionally hurting themselves, and with that, they are hurting the people around them. And it's so important to like keep that in mind when you're dealing with other people, like just the basics of empathy, right? And that's why I feel like this book will make you smarter, because it just makes you think about all of the things that older people, your parents, your grandparents, just anybody, a stranger on the street, of the things that they could be going through. And I think that's really powerful, and I think that that is a quality that I hope we as human beings, as community, are not losing. And we all need to be very intentional on how we practice and how we do that, and how we do empathy for each other and ourselves. That is a list of books that I think will make you smarter. They made me smarter, and I just love to share that with others. If you are looking for more recommendations, please check out any diverse book recommendations. Literally, I am working on this list right now, and I'm having the time of my life. So check that out if you're interested.